We'll now take a look at the concept of rounding, and we're going to be using a vertical number line for this process. A vertical number line goes up and down, rather than the typical number line that goes left and right. Using a vertical number line will help students understand the idea of rounding up or rounding down. On this vertical number line, I have the two endpoints marked 10 and 20. The first thing we need to do is decide what our midpoint is, or halfway between 10 and 20. Halfway between 10 and 20 is 15. On this vertical number line, I have two endpoints marked 1,000 and 2,000. If I break about 2,000 into 20 hundreds and break apart 1,000 into 10 hundreds, think about my pattern: 10 and 10, 20 and 20. Halfway between 10 hundreds and 20 hundreds would be 15 hundreds. We write the number in a standard form, 1,500. On this vertical number line, I've already broken apart 31,000 and 32,000 into my hundreds. I have 310 hundreds, 320 hundreds. Again, you'll see that I'm using 10 and 20 here. Halfway between 10 and 20 would be 15. So I have a midpoint of 315 hundreds, or in the standard form, 31,500. When given the problem of rounding to the nearest thousand, let's take a look at the number 4,100. The first thing we need to look at is how many thousands we're working with. In this case, we're working with 4,000. If we add another 1,000 to find out what the next 1,000 would be, the next 1,000 is 5,000. Halfway, or midpoint, between 4,000 and 5,000 will be 4,500. If I place my 4,100 on my vertical number line, I see that it's closer to 4,000. So I'm going to round down to the nearest 1,000, and I find out that it's 4,000. If I were to place the number 4,700 on the same vertical line, I see that it's part of the way between 4,500 or 4,500 and 5,000. It's closer to 5,000 than it is to 4,000, so the number 4,000 rounds to 5,000. It rounds up. Let's take a look at the number 14,500. We'll use the same process to round to the nearest 1,000. First of all, the lowest 1,000 of 14,500 is 14,000. If I add another 1,000 to find what my next 1,000 would be, I see that the next 1,000 is 15,000. The midpoint between 14,000 and 15,000 is 14,500. Now 14,500 is midway, but the way I look at it is, if you're on the top of a hill, you're already halfway there, you're just going to continue going to the next higher. 14,500 is going to round up to 15,000. If I were to place the number 14,990 on my vertical number line, I see that it's clearly closer to 15,000 than it is to 14,000. 14,990 rounds up to 15,000. The number 14,345, when I place it on my vertical number line, is clearly closer to the 14,000 than it is to the 15,000. 14,345 rounds down to 14,000. Now let's take a look at a typical word problem that we are going to see as we do our rounding. A pilot wanted to know about how many kilometers he flew on his last 3 flights. From New York City to London, he flew 5,572 kilometers. Then, from London to Beijing, he flew 8,147 kilometers. Finally, he flew 10,996 kilometers from Beijing back to New York City. Round each number to the nearest thousand. Then, find the sum of the rounded numbers to estimate about how many kilometers the pilot flew. We've got a lot to do on this problem. It's not just a simple round. If we analyze our word problem like this, the first part of the directions that we need to do is look at about how many kilometers. When we see the word about in a word problem, we know we're going to be rounding or estimating. The next thing we look at is round each number, and it tells us exactly where to round it to the nearest thousand, just like we've been practicing. But no, we're not done yet. After we do all of our rounding, then we need to find the sum of the rounded numbers to find out how many kilometers the pilot flew. Well, let's take a look. It says he flew 3 flights, so I need to make sure that I'm rounding 1, 2, 3 different distances. For the first flight, from New York City to London, using my vertical number line, I place 5,000, 6,000, and the midway point of 5,500. If the original number was 5,572 kilometers, I place that on my vertical number line, and I see that it's closer to 6,000 than it is to 5,000. So my first distance rounds to 6,000. I need to use the exact same process for the other 2 distances. Now that I've found the rounded distance for each flight, I'm still not finished. Now I need to find the sum of the rounded numbers. Well, 6,000 was the rounded number for the first flight. 8,000 was the rounded number for the second flight. 11,000 was the rounded number for the third flight. When I add all these 3 distances together, I come up with a sum of 25,000. Don't forget to mark it as kilometers, because that's what we're working with in the word problem. But no, we're not finished yet. In a word problem, we need to restate our answer in a sentence. The pilot flew about 25,000 kilometers on his last 3 flights. And I reference the word about in my answer because we are rounding.